Well, this is Jake, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of the Fat Gay Texan Podcast. This is a show where we talk about anything and everything, and we don't throw political correctness out the window because we never let it in the house to begin with. It's been a while since I've addressed my public, the 5 subscribers, and I wanted to give an explanation as to why there has been an absence in this podcast being produced. And it's certainly not because I have lost the will to do it, because I have a lot to talk about. But what has happened over the last couple of weeks is we have decided to move, and we really loved where we lived. We had a great apartment. There was nothing wrong with the structure itself. We actually had lived there for about a year and a half after we moved from a house we owned, but times change and sometimes you have to move. So we ended up moving into our apartment, and it was great. I mean, we really liked it. It was a big apartment, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, and it's an old building, so it had the big fireplace, all those things. And we really decked it out something nice. I really kind of like the classic or the Victorian style things. So we had chandeliers and we had nice curtains and, wonderful furniture, things like that. But over the last 2 months, the place had gone downhill significantly and we had to move. And had to is the wrong description of it. We weren't forced out by any stretch of the imagination, but circumstances there had changed so much that we did have to leave. So we made a decision in rather a short period of time, and we bought another house. We moved out and we packed everything up, and it all happened within like a 2-week period. So that is why I've been gone. And we were selling stuff and having to get a U-Haul, all those other things. And here we are. So why did we leave? How does that tie into a podcast? And why should you care as the listener? We left because our apartment complex had become a center, well, not a center, but they had started accepting refugees from Venezuela. And nearly over 100 of them had been accepted in. And I don't have anything against anybody from Venezuela. However, that's all they were moving in. And we had several fires. My vehicle was broken into. We had gunshots. We had loud parties. We had drinking. The drug use was rampant. All this happened in a 2-month period. As soon as they started letting these refugees flood in, there was no thought on the apartment complex's side about safety. The people they were allowing to move in, they didn't have social security cards. They were not legal citizens. It was just a mess. And it's not the fact that they're Venezuelan. It's the fact that the people that are coming in, at least in my experience, as refugees, are able-bodied young people who have nothing to do with their time except stay home, drink, party, and make a bunch of noise. It just turned into a mess. We didn't feel safe there. We couldn't get any rest there. I mean, our clothes smelled like marijuana constantly. The whole place reeked of marijuana. It was insane. I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything go down the tubes that quickly. I talked to management. Of course, the assistant manager, who was a very lovely person, understood what was going on, and she had the same issues. She lived there, and she was being disturbed just as badly as we were by it. The manager was actually in favor of all this and really only preferred to bring in people who spoke Spanish, and that is the truth. It's not an assumption. And the place was just flooded with a bunch of young people with nothing to do, no jobs, that we're paying the rent for as taxpayers. And it just went downhill. I talked to the police because we had to call. There was a huge party one night, about 40 people blocking the main entrance out there just drinking and having a grand old party. And when I spoke to the police officer, the head police officer for our old neighborhood, he said it had gone downhill really quickly ever since the Venezuelans moved in. And those were his exact words. we were surrounded by other apartment buildings. We live very close to downtown. And he said it was only our community where he was having problems. And no, we had lived there for a year and a half. It was quiet. It was peaceful. And we loved it. In fact, we had spent money on painting and decorating the place. We had just like 4 months ago. We had every intention of staying for years. That's how quickly things can change when the government lets things run amok. So here we are, working, tax-paying citizens, essentially forced out of their home because of people who are not legal tax-paying citizens and their behavior. And the government just seems to be okay with this. Let them in. And then I found out in my research that in the state of Texas, they can't discriminate against someone, the apartment complexes. If they're, here we have what's called a TAA lease. It's a Texas Apartment Association. Most apartment communities in Texas fall underneath the TAA. And you cannot discriminate if you're a member of the TAA against anyone, even based on citizenship status, which is ridiculous. So that means I, as a tax-paying American citizen that is legally here, I don't care if you're legally here because you were born here, you're legally here because you immigrated and you came here legally. Any of us that are here legally, when we apply for an apartment, they do a credit check, they do a background check, they go through all this nonsense, to make sure you're worthy and that you're going to pay your rent and everything else. But here, if you're illegal, they can't run a background check on you. They don't do a credit check on you. You don't have any of that stuff. And they just let you in because you can't discriminate against someone based on their citizenship status. And I just think that is ridiculous. So those of us who are Americans are treated worse, and we could be denied. Oh, well, I see that you have a credit issue. 20 years ago, you were kicked out of an apartment company. Maybe not 20 years ago, but you know what I'm saying. We as the citizens are subject to scrutiny. If you're here illegally, you're not subject to that scrutiny. Just come on over, do whatever in the hell you want. We don't care. So that is the reason I have been absent the last 2 to 3 weeks. And I haven't recorded a podcast episode. We have been really busy rearranging our lives and moving and uprooting at very short notice. And we moved away from the city. We moved out to a rural area where the risk of something like that happening again to us is very rare. It is a horrible thing to be forced out of your home by choices that the government is making. They're just telling people to come on over, come on over, come on over. And it's affecting me. It's affected a lot of people. I didn't think it would happen to me. I didn't think in a relatively nice part of town, not too far from downtown, that I would have to worry about essentially being invaded and being forced to leave my home that I spent my money on, that I loved, that we had made memories in, that we had planned to stay in for a very long time. We only got that apartment after my mother-in-law passed, and we were neighbors. My mother-in-law, we were all neighbors, and she passed, and it became very hard to go home and see her house empty there every day. That apartment was our fresh start. That was the beginning of our new lives. We'd lost someone dear. This was our way of starting over again and making our own lives without her. So this apartment held a lot of dreams for us. And for about a year and a couple of months, it was. And all that was torn to pieces because the government is just opening the borders and letting whoever in the hell wants to come over here. These are not sad, desolate, desperate people. These are people who are completely able to work, young, most of them men, and we're supporting them. When you move, you have to go through a bunch of processes, right? And that, outside of packing and everything, there's every service you subscribe to or utility or what have you have to get that either canceled or moved or whatever. So when I called the internet provider, the area where we moved to, they don't service this area. It's gone to cancel. And the lady I spoke to at Spectrum, who was very nice. I had a great conversation with her. Very nice lady. I told her why we were moving. And she said, 3 calls before me, she spoke to a lady in Florida that was having to leave her apartment for the exact same reason. What are the odds of that? If this isn't happening more than you think it is, what are the odds that a call center representative for Spectrum Internet has 2 calls about refugees taking over or illegals taking over a certain area and people having to move because of that? 3 calls apart on the same day. What are the odds? That means this is a bigger problem than most people know it is. We didn't know it was until we experienced it. So, is there a moral to this? I don't know. Be careful how you vote, because it's going to continue to happen. I'm no one special, just an average person living an average life. And it happened to me. It happened to that lady in Florida who was also an average person living an average life. It's happening to people all over the country. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with culture clashing. It has everything to do with people who don't have to work for anything, don't ever respect anything. No respect. It's not right. So before you go off and you vote for this brave new world of Kamala Harris, remember the world as it is now and what it's becoming, the United States specifically. What I don't want you to do is vote for someone like her who is encouraging these open borders. Don't vote for them and regret it a couple of years later, or even a couple of months later. This can happen to you. Your whole life can be uprooted because of government policy. Don't think it won't affect you, because it will at some point. We literally had to move out, way out into the country to get away from it. I'm not going to subject my family to that again. We have less than a month now before we vote. I've expressed on this channel that I don't care for Trump and I don't like Kamala. But if these current policies keep up, the America we know and love, and I don't care who you are, you know and you love this country. Whether you will admit it or not, you love it. If you don't love the country as a whole, you love going home, sleeping in your bed late at night, peaceful. You love the memories you've had with your family and the places you've lived. You love going to your grocery store. You love the familiarity of it all. So did I. It all changed in less than 60 days. So don't make the mistake, because this crap is affecting our day-to-day lives. I never thought it would happen to me. And here I am, talking to you now, in the middle of the country, out in the sticks, as they say, because I ran away to protect my family and to have peace and sanity when I came home every night. I don't want the same thing to happen to y'all. This has been Jake to the Fat Gay Texan. Hope you liked this podcast. If you did, please don't forget to like or subscribe. It really does help us out. And we're back in business. Sorry to come back with you come back after such a long absence and hit you with that sort of story. But here we are. That's what it is. And we're back. We'll be back to our normally scheduled programming in the next week or two. Every Friday around 5 o'clock, a new episode will drop. Hope you enjoy it. And until next time, America, take care.